The finale of Landman has just been released, and after having 10 episodes with us following Tommy Norris as he navigated the oil industry along with the conflict that he was facing with the cartel, the season concluded with the largest of crescendos. With us finding out the fate of Monty, following it looking like he was on the cusp of death in episode 9, us being shown the similarity between the oil industry and the cartel's empire, and also the coyote and its symbolism being featured yet again. Let's dive into this 1 hour and 20 minute finale and break down all of the important details. Here is Landman episode 10, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The meaning of the coyote. As we saw in the penultimate episode of the season, this finale concluded in a pretty similar way. Instead of us seeing a coyote being shot, we saw a new coyote standing over the carcass of the one that the neighbor killed that Tommy bore witness to. To me, I took this moment as it being symbolic of Tommy ascending the position of president of MTEX, and that dead coyote represented Monty and the fact that he was now dead. We didn't hear that Monty had died, nor did Tommy even know at that point, but what we did see was a clip of Cammy hugging Monty in the hospital bed as the machine was flashing red and there was no heartbeat that was appearing on the monitor, showing that he flatlined and that his heart was no longer beating. Monty's daughters were also there and they were now in tears. That new coyote being out there represented Tommy, and I feel with him basically saying to the coyote that it best get out of there because coyotes get shot around there. It represented the hostile landscape of the oil industry and the specific environment that Tommy was working in and choosing to stay in. Monty navigated that space and lived in that world with the hopes of being somebody that would be remembered. In order to gain that immortality that he was craving, it ended up driving him into an early grave. I doubt Monty will even be remembered, and just like with the coyote standing over the dead body of the previous one, the position is always filled and somebody else comes along and replaces you. As Tommy said to Angela during the episode, men die, oil companies don't die. The coyote was pretty much the visual representation of that very scenario being played out. The space still exists, but another coyote is now there in its place. Tommy standing there, all beaten, battered and bruised, showed that he was about to embark onto most probably the most difficult time of his career, and continue to work in that very landscape that could see him end up like Monty, and like the coyote that was standing there alive and well only the other day. Is it worth the risk? To Tommy, it seems to most definitely be. But after all, he is a betting man, I suppose. The similarity between worlds. One thing that got a heavy focus in this episode of the show was the power that oil companies have and how they're essentially involved in global politics and have dictated relationships between countries and regions for decades, even though it's the very thing that's also known for causing harm to the planet. Alongside that, the similarity between the oil and gas industry and the world that the cartel were living in was something that was made apparent too. For example, the politicians, law enforcement officers, and people of power being connected in both worlds showed that there were levels of corruption that were running through. This was shown to us when Tommy was saved by Galino from Jimenez, and the police chief alerted Galino that they were outside. The power that Tommy felt as though his industry had was the exact power that the cartel had, because it was the same people that were interconnected in both. Both worlds are about making money, and both have their ethical issues too, so it was interesting seeing both being positioned in a similar way. In the context of the show, both the cartel and Tommy getting on and having a relationship where they can coexist allows both industries to thrive. Thrive in the sense that the cartel can carry out their operation in the middle of nowhere on the land where they're not going to get caught by law enforcement. That's why Galino ultimately rescued Tommy, because he knew that they previously had a strong relationship, but Jimenez was a man that was hungry for power and wanted to make a statement. Something which would have been detrimental to the entire operation. Angela and Aynsley. I've complained a lot about Aynsley and Angela over the past few weeks, and okay, granted they had that stupid scene with the old folks and the dancers in this episode, but within the finale I actually feel like I understood and saw the characters' value in the show. Their purpose and role is all about showing the family side of being involved with somebody that's working in that industry. The worry that Angela has, the lack of transparency that she also has with not knowing where Tommy is, if he's safe and what's happened to him. That's something that I didn't quite think about to start with, but in seeing both of them together when he was on the sofa, all beaten, it just finally clicked. Yeah, there's a lot of waffle and filler with Angela, with her not really feeling like she's got that much of a purpose. But when we actually saw her break down in the kitchen over the worry about Tommy and the state that he was in, it all just started to make sense to me. Tommy also saying that she saw Angela's face when his life was flashing before his eyes when he was kidnapped by Jimenez and was on the cusp of death. It just stressed the importance that she held to him. So I saw more value in the character in the finale after that. I originally thought that Angela or Aynsley would be taken by the cartel and used as leverage to get back at Tommy, and I kind of feel like that would have been a good route for the show to go down. But at the same time, if that did happen, it wouldn't have allowed the overarching message of the two worlds being similar in the power that they hold and the way that they can move mountains in order to get what they want to be something that came across. That route would have instead pushed Tommy to the point of war with the cartel, and it would have led season 2 to have gone in a completely different direction. With regards to Aynsley, I feel like her involvement in the show is probably the most minimal, and she actually contributes the least. In all seriousness, if she was taken out of the show, nothing, and I genuinely mean nothing, would have changed when it came to the outcome of the season finale. We just mainly see Tommy's family side with her, but it's a story that doesn't really have any consequences or anything like that. So her being with Ryder is something that I don't really care for or need to see that much. What will happen next? If there's to be a season 2 of the show, I think there are a couple of different directions that it's going to go in. Following Monty being killed, I think we're going to see Tommy acting as the president of the company, and him looking to close that final deal on the piece of land on Wolf Camp that Cammy wanted him to carry out. Rebecca now finds herself stuck in a world where what she's doing is going against her morals, so I imagine we'll see her mindset shifting and altering when the next season arrives. With regards to Cooper and Ariana, I think we'll see Cooper's business venture growing. Within the finale, we saw that he was getting more of the smaller folks together in order to get them on board as a larger group. Then that way he'd be able to make more money, and in turn give them more money and a larger percentage, showing that he's trying to run his business with their well-being and profit at more of a front-of-mind position, something which feels different for that industry. I also do wonder if it's going to cause him and his father to butt heads in the next season, as Tommy is obviously now president of MTEX and Cooper's end goal is to go after Wolfcamp Shale, the very place that Tommy is negotiating and working on. So that could be something that does come up. My review of the finale. I thought this was a really good episode of the show. It finished just how it started, with Tommy having a bag over his head whilst being interrogated by Jimenez. And like how Jimenez killed the person that was watching over Tommy, Galino killed Jimenez in the exact same way. This finale was about an hour and 20 minutes long, and if I'm being honest, I don't really feel like it needed to be. I actually found the scenes with Ariana mourning her husband to be scenes that lingered for just a bit too long. It got okay when Cooper came back and they started working through it together, but when it was just her, I feel like it dragged on for just a bit too long. I'd also say the same for the scenes with Aynsley and Ryder. It contributed nothing to the episode and I could have done without it. Cooper and Ariana didn't actually get that much of a focus at all in the finale, other than Cooper helping Ariana with her grieving and just showing that he was going to be supportive of her whilst she was mourning and reliving the memories of her former husband. It surprised me that they didn't have more going on, because Cooper and Ariana were such a core part of the story during the beginning, so I thought it was a bit of a shame. Death was a key theme of this episode, and when Tommy was in his car, alone with his thoughts, it was something that really focused on that. He was the most somber that we'd seen him throughout the entirety of the show, and he was mourning his dear friend before he'd even passed. It was a strong performance in this episode from Billy Bob Thornton. Those scenes where he was being tortured were absolutely brutal too. The hammer, the chains, the nails, everything about it was just horrific. I do think it's a shame that Jon Hamm is no longer going to be in the show. He was such a good character as Monty, but I would say that it did feel rather fitting that he died, considering there was a heavy focus a few episodes back on him not really caring about the future generations and future in general. This is a show that's definitely worth watching. The penultimate episode was probably the only one where I didn't enjoy it as much as the others, but overall, it's easily one of the best shows that's been on TV right now. Taylor Sheridan has done it again with a show, and I'm just hoping that there's going to be a season 2. So, there you have it, Landman episode 10, ending explained. What did you think of the finale? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video, and I'll see you in the next one.